Hey, everybody. I wasn't thinking about recording today, but I realized that it's been a little while, been a few days since I checked in. Um, I've had a lot on my plate. Nothing bad though. I'm already thinking about my next project now that I got this one done. Um, I've gotten feedback from three out of the five people that I've sent it to be proofreaders and fact checkers. I'm still waiting for two more to get back to me before I make it public. But I have started to share it with a handful of other people um, because the feedback that I've gotten back so far has all been positive. I'm already thinking about my next project. However, I'm kind of shelved that. I'm gonna start doing the research for it, but I'm not gonna start going gung ho in it because um, next weekend is gonna be where I become a member of the church, and once I'm a member, they're able to sign me up immediately for the lay classes, which is going to be in January. So I've got the holidays to get through, and then in January, I'll be starting those. So that's going to get my focus. That's where my attention's going to be because that's where it needs to be. I've learned to prioritize. I just had a realization a few moments ago. Um, I've kind of taught people through my life how to bamboozle me. I'm what they call honest to a fault. I really am, because when people screw up with me, I will tell them exactly how they screwed up. And all that does, right? You're not doing that. When I do it, it comes from a place of correction, of love, of hey, if you fix this about yourself, you would have a better outcome. But I have to realize the mentality that people I tell it to is, okay, so this is where you saw through me, so this is what I have to cover if I want to get through it with somebody else, if I want to get it over on somebody else. And it's funny, that twist of, again, perspective and perception. It's what it's all about. You know, some people think I get a little cocky at times, and they're right, I do. Um, but again, there's a difference between arrogance and acceptance. Um, and the more I dive into the work that I feel called to, the more I see the truth of what my life has been up to this point. Like, I really did waste a lot of time letting myself be distracted from what I was supposed to be doing. And they are not kidding. The devil will absolutely send anything he can to hold you back. I wasted 11 years with somebody who wanted me to build but didn't want to build with me. When I hit a low point, like, hey, give me a little boost here. That's all I need. Couldn't do it. Couldn't muster it. Their pride and their ego. When somebody puts their wants before your needs, they are not somebody to have in your life. Period. There's a difference between self love and self appreciation and selfishness. There is a difference. One version is healthy, the other one is not. So, too many people think black and white. If they want this, they do that. And that's not the case. That's not how life works. There is no black and white, one size fits all answer. There isn't. That's why you got to learn to build your discernment. You know, it's funny. Today there was a few people missing from church today, for different reasons. I believe there was only 4 or 5 of us in the adult class, and I got nominated, so I read the lesson and led the study. And it's funny because a lot of it was talking about accepting correction. And that's like my topic. So, it's really funny how God works to put things in different hands at different times. Because that was the thing I fought with for years. That pride that, no, I know what's better for me. I understand myself. No, God knows me better than I do. God knows what is best for me. And because of those years that I ignored red flags, and I mean, they weren't like little ones, that were hidden. No, they were in my face, full-size flags. And I ignored them because I thought I knew better. And then when I stopped ignoring them, I got to experience better. I am starting to live up to my full potential. I spent the last few years in a funk, being stuck, because instead of the people around me helping me to rebuild and grow, they wanted to use me, my gifts, to help build them up. But they realized if they helped build me up, I might realize what was really going on and walk away. And that's what it finally happened. I literally hit the reset button on my life. I walked away from pretty much every friend I knew. Not everybody. There's still a few that I, from my past that I would gladly have communication with. But some people, they're not worth the waste of my energy, my time, my attention. Be careful. Don't compete with your people, because if they're competing with you, they're not your people. See who genuinely claps when you have good news, and see who tries to put you down when you try to better yourself. Watch who's in competition. Because if they're in competition, they're not trying to cooperate and work with you. They're not people that will help build you up when you need that boost. They're just people that are going to drain you. They're the kind of people that love to trample you to act like they're better. And that used to be the type of people that I hung around with. I accepted what I thought I deserved. And I had to have that moment. And I do mean it was like somebody flipped a switch. I went from worrying about everybody else to worrying about myself. And again, not in that selfish way, but in that, hey, you're hurting yourself by ignoring the things you're ignoring. You can't let things slide like you're doing. You're not being a kind person. You're being a doormat. And the minute I had that realization and all that energy that I took, all that good talk, that I absolutely can speak life into people. I absolutely can. I've been doing it for years. And all that energy I was giving to others, I finally turned inward onto myself. I finished a project that I started years ago, and it came out better than I anticipated. I added so much to it. I've already got ideas for the next project. I'm already taking steps to be where I was supposed to be if I hadn't lollygagged and let myself get distracted. I'm already back on that path. We're even fast tracking it. It's amazing how it's working. Like, I really do fully believe, that God has a plan and He's going to make sure it comes through. All I got to do is be willing to do my part. Because the minute I made the decision that I was going to quit letting myself be distracted and I was going to focus, boom, 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 one thing after another, everything's just falling into place. It's fantastic. and nobody will convince me otherwise. You know, we all have a part to play, a place to be, something to do. You know, and I really need people to understand. Like, it's funny because the people that refuse to like read the Bible, to take it at face value, are the ones who need it the most. Look at all the prophets of old. They all had something wrong with them. You know, and that's the point. That is the entire point. The entire Bible is a message of redemption. And the people that ignore it are the ones that don't want to go through the process for the redemption. They don't want to let go of their ego and their pride and make changes to themselves. You know, it's that, like I said, that's the curse of that victim mentality. You know, if you are the professional victim, if you are always the victim, if there is always an excuse for your poor behavior, you become the thing that you claim to fight against. Too many people let the things that have happened to them turn them into the thing that broke them, instead of taking the time and doing the work to heal and to understand things better and to make changes, to make a difference. Because it's easier to just play the blame game. Oh, it's not my fault. They did it to me. Which I'm not saying that's not true. But if you practice hyper accountability, you realize that every choice you make leads to an outcome. Even if it was unforeseen. That's why hindsight is 20/20. Because after the fact, that's when you can learn from it. But then you have people that put them blinders on them. Oh, I can't see what's around me. I can only see what's in front of me. And you do yourself a disservice living that way. You really do. You know, that is my testimony in a nutshell. Be open to correction. Be humble. Be teachable. You know, the minute I let my arrogance go, and let me tell you, I've had a lot of things in my life try to break me. And it took a whole cascade of events before it happened. That's something to look at, because that is my willpower. Like, personally, I think that's why God uses me, because I'm so hard-headed that once I make up my mind I'm doing it, it's getting done. I just have to focus that energy in the right place, and I finally am. You know, me getting this writing project done isn't the end of that project. It's the beginning of something new. And I don't know yet what that is, but I know I'm going to end up where I need to be. I just got to, again, do my part. You know. I have the schedule. We're going to do a video series. Once I hear back from my last two people and I know that everything is good, here is the schedule for, I made this a few days ago, the videos that are going to go with this book that I wrote. It was a total of 129 passages from the Bible. The one I used the most was the New King James Version, because that's the Bible I use the most. I had 19 verses from that. And I had 16 verses from the ESV the NLT, the MEV, the CSB, and the TEV, which the TEV is also known as the Good News Bible. And then I had 15 each from the NIV and the KJV. Notice I tried to keep the numbers fairly even because I did try to do a comparison between versions of the Bible for different passages. And again, like I've said before, I made a total of 90 questions, and they weren't right or wrong answers. They were questions of reflection to make people look within themselves. And I honestly think that was one of the things that I added that I hadn't thought about in the original project. And I think that's part of what really makes it. Because it's that guided tour of somebody down into their own psyche, personality, whatever you want to call it, their own experiences. Yeah, and I think that makes a major difference in what I have here. And I'm really excited to share it, but I don't want to get ahead of myself because that was a problem in the past. I announced things too quickly. And then I give the enemy an opportunity to step in and distract me from it. So now I've learned to, not say something until it's inevitable. But I'm really looking forward to, what I have coming up, the direction I'm heading. And, one of my problems in the past was, again, that project I started years ago, and then I let myself get distracted, and I put it on the back burner. I start things that I don't finish. And I'm not doing that anymore. At least for now. And I have to stay on that kick. Again, it's that self-discipline. And that self-discipline is what's coming from my reading. I read something in the Bible every day now. Every single day. I keep seeking more clarity, more wisdom. You can read the Bible front to back 20 times and still take new things from it. That's one of the greatest things about it. I have cut off, speaking of earlier cutting off different friends, there was another church. I was, for a little while, stuck between two churches. And again, my lesson learned is start looking out for red flags. Earlier in my dealings with this one church, they asked, what's your history? What's your background like? And again, like I said, if you look back at all the prophets, Elijah battled depression. Moses had killed somebody. Saul was a straight up terrorist. He was a murderer of Christians, and he became not only a disciple but the disciple. It's like the more messed up your past, the stronger God can work through you. Because those incidents teach you humility. That's when life breaks you down. And it takes that humility to be an instrument. You have to be fully willing to submit to God. To do your part in the plan that He has for your life. And until you have that submission, you will not be able to fill that role. That's why people that have had a harder life are more easily used, by God to do what He needs. To make the world a better place, to help. And I'm not saying you have to go through a series of tragedies to be, that kind of person. I'm not saying you have to go out and do something wrong. It's not something you can plan. But it's a reoccurring theme. Like I said, the Bible's whole story is redemption. It doesn't matter. And this is what I tell everybody. It's all about accountability. That's the first step of repentance. It's not about what you've done. It's about what you're willing to do. Are you willing to put your pride and ego aside? Are you willing to put in the work to learn and grow? That's what matters. But going back, that was the first red flag. The second red flag was the very first class I went to for this other group was about tithing. Which, don't get me wrong, that in itself, because tithing is part of the faith. I mean, it is talked about in the Bible. I'm not saying that. But if people make it a focus, you can't serve two masters. The focus of the church should not be the money coming into the church. The focus of the church should be the Jesus going out of the church, if that makes sense. That should be first and foremost. Because if that's up, everything else will be up. Again, that's my own life experience. The more you sacrifice, again, right now, I'm living proof. I used to have all this free time that I would waste doing various things, trying to please other people for nothing. It got me nowhere. But then I quit doing that, and now I started focusing on what I felt this calling for most of my life, and I've ignored it because, well, for various reasons, but it's all excuses. That's all it is. And I finally, again, got myself broken down enough to the point where the excuses didn't stick anymore. And now I'm proving to myself by action. Hey, dummy, you should have done this sooner. But that's my message. That is absolutely part of my testimony. That's what makes my story powerful. Because I lived it. I rebelled. I was absolutely a rebel. I fought God's calling for me tooth and claw. And it wasn't until I was humbled and submitted that my life turned around. So to all the people that had a hand in that humbling, thank you. I know you meant it for my detriment, but God used it for my good. So thank you. You got me back on track. I'm where I need to be. And I know that is going to continue to propel forward. I'm really excited. For the first time in years, I get to say that I am excited for the future. I see a future. One that I like. And again, I look in the mirror and I like what I see. Other people might have something to say about it. And that's a them problem, not a me problem. But if you, take anything from all these talks that I have and all these words that I share, if you take anything from it, right, it is never too late to turn your life around. To make a difference, to do better. It doesn't matter, again, what you've done. What matters is what you are willing to do. Are you willing to lay down your life for another the way that Jesus did? And again, it's easy to die for somebody. It's harder to put yourself aside and do what someone else wants for you. To dedicate your life to somebody else's message. And that's what we as Christians are supposed to do. It's not about us. It's about the one we serve. But again, you have to get humbled. You have to get broken down. to really reach that level. You know, some people are born naturally with that humility, and they just follow the path, and that's great for them. I admire them for it, but most of us have to go through the trials. Most of us have to be shaped and refined, and God has to mold us. Yeah. But seriously, start studying your word. Get into it, understand it, build your discernment. Because when you build your discernment, you'll make better choices. And when you start making better choices, you'll have better outcomes. And the better outcomes, the further you'll get in life. You see, it's a whole domino effect. But you gotta put that pride and ego aside. You gotta knock yourself down a peg. You gotta be willing to do it. So that's the message for this evening. I never finished my story. The final straw. The third red flag was literally the last time I visited with the people from that church. We were talking about, my life schedule. I don't drive. I take care of my grandmother, and I was trying to, spend time with my father while he was fighting cancer, which I got the good news this week. He is now cancer-free, so that's awesome. Battle's not over yet, but it means, we're definitely on the winning side of it, so that's great. And I didn't get to see him again today, and I feel bad about that, and it really sucks that I'm not driving. If I could get around myself, then I could do certain things, but there's a lot of reasons why that's not a good idea. So, at least for now. Not until certain things change. Which, health-wise, I'm doing better. I made it to December without another heart attack, so, knock on wood. What's scary is that's the first time in 3 years that I can say that. There's an eye-opener for you. But, again, going back to my original thing, how you interact with people is how they know to treat you. All right? I got treated like crap because I tolerated crap behavior. And when I put my foot down and said, you are not going to treat me that way anymore, and walked away, that was when things got better. And the same thing, I have been fighting this urge to reach out to these people and be like, hey, this is why you lost me, just so you know. But then if I do that, they won't use that for correction. They'll use that for coercion. Like, okay, the next time I want to get somebody, I have to move this way, not that way. So, again, going back to the story, and I said, I haven't been able to get there because this, and this. And they're like, oh, well, if there's a reason to miss being there, that would be it. And literally the next conversation we had was through text. And they said, hey, are you going to make it this week? And I said, no, because I've got this and this to take care of. Family. And then I got this lecture. Okay. Again, it says straight in the Bible, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't say one thing one time and then do something else the next. I have learned that is the biggest red flag. If there is not consistency, if the words are not matching the pattern, walk away from it. I don't care if it's a relationship, a romantic relationship. I don't care if it's a friendship. I don't care if it's in this case, it was a church. But pay attention to that. Don't just give people the benefit of the doubt. That was my downfall. I believe the words. I didn't pay attention to the patterns. I mean, I did pay attention. I saw them, but I, again, put the blinders on. I didn't let myself see the red flags. And I regret that, and I learned that lesson. I wasted so much time doing the wrong thing because I wanted to do it my way. I wanted what I wanted. And when I got broken down to where I didn't know what I wanted anymore, that's when God said, okay, we can get started now. Literally my story. That's how it happened. So yeah, I'm living proof to that testimony. So just, again, be aware of the people you surround yourself with. And some of it is family. Some people we don't have a choice in. Some, like coworkers or things like that, they're people that we have to be around. Again, you cannot change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. You can change how you interact with the people around you as well. Right? Don't feed your time and energy, right? That's a finite resource. That's one of the greatest things we have is our time and energy. Why are you going to feed it into the wrong things? Why cast your pearls before swine? All they're going to do is trample it in the mud. You have to plant your seeds in fertile soil so they grow. But life isn't cheap. You have to pay attention. You have to be willing to work for it, to do the work. Don't let yourself get distracted by the wrong things. Pick the right master to serve. Be very careful. That's why we have free will. We get to choose which one has the most benefit. And for me, it's definitely God. Because when I tried to do it my own way, when I tried to do it the worldly way, I failed miserably. And I felt miserable because of it. As soon as I quit listening to the voices of the world around me, and I started listening to that still small whisper, that's when things took a turnaround. Best move I ever made. And I wish I could express that easier to people. Because when I say it was like throwing a switch, like it was almost instant mental change. Become that new creature. You'll like it. Trust me. You might not like the process to get there, but you'll like the end result. Anyway, this has already went on long enough, for me saying I wasn't going to record, and it's 30 minutes instead of 15, so I had a lot to ramble on tonight. But as usual, take care of yourself. Keep trying to help take care of each other. I'll see you in the next one.